Thanks for staying with us on Headlines Now. Now, corruption must come to an end and transparency should set in, and it's now or never. Well, these are voices within a group called Transparent Chennai that has come out with a final audit report with residents and ward councillors in Indiranagar. In a ward accountability experiment this evening, they had documented the locations and sizes of piles of garbage, measured sidewalks and walkability, and even mapped public toilets and recorded their conditions, and had submitted all of these recordings to the ward councillor candidates. In fact, some of those candidates had met with some of the residents from this particular ward in a public meeting where results of the findings were shared and solutions asked for. And joining me this evening is, in fact, the Director of Transparent Chennai, Ms. Nithya Raman. Thanks very much indeed for coming to your studios this evening. First off, at a time and at a scene in India where everybody is against corruption through even Anna Hazare movement or otherwise, getting through to ward councillors at a more local and a ground level. That's what you are aiming at, and drawing youngsters to that. How difficult and a big challenge was it to get all of this data and to present this to the candidates and taking this forward as well?
Actually, one of the things that we really enjoyed about doing this experiment was the kind of enthusiasm that we had from both the volunteers who collected the data, as well as the citizens who were present at the meeting today, and actually the councillors who came, the councillor candidates who had come. We had mapped out all of these problems in the last month, in September, and volunteers came from 10 in the morning till 6 in the evening on 4 consecutive Saturdays to map out all these issues, and we spent the last 2 weeks processing this data and making it into a viable form.
What categories you covered? No, this is a Ward 176, I believe, that
Yes,
you've covered. So what kind of issues have you covered?
So Ward 176 is actually a fairly well-serviced ward. It covers the areas of Besan Nagar, Shastri Nagar and Adayar, and parts of Gandhi Nagar. We looked at basically 3 major issues. One was surface garbage. We looked at not just where the dustbins were, but whether those dustbins were usable. We also looked at whether they were trash lying on the ground, and we measured the size of those trash piles. We also looked at public toilets. We found their locations, and we also looked at how usable they were. Were they blocked up? Did they have lights? Did they have doors? Did they smell? We also finally looked at pedestrian issues. So issues facing walkers in those places. Were the sidewalks walkable? Was it difficult to cross a road? How wide were they? And
so how useful is all of this data? If I'm a layperson, a common man, how would this benefit me? What can I do with such data?
Well, each of us, I think, in our individual lives, we experience the city and we experience all the problems in it on an individual level. What this kind of process does is it allows us to aggregate that information and actually make it useful for holding an elected representative or a municipal department accountable for making solutions happen, for solving those problems. The government itself collects data, obviously, right? And we can file RTIs to get that data.
Yes.
So we can ask them how many dumpsters are in Ward 176, and they'll give us a number. But they'll never be able to tell us how many of those dumpsters are actually useful. Are they upturned? Are they overflowing? Are they broken? This is the kind of data that you're able to get only from citizens and through this kind of an effort. And what this enables you to do, this kind of process, is it aggregates that data and makes it powerful.
Right.
And
so you've engaged students from colleges, some residents as well volunteering into this.
Yes.
But how credible would you think it is? Would it be 100%?
Well, crowdsourced data of this nature, citizen-generated data, is always going to be dependent on how well the citizens did in terms of collecting that data. But any data set has that problem, whether it's a government-produced data set, or a citizen-produced data set, or a data set produced by a marketing agency. So data is always problematic, and people who work with data know that. So this is as credible as coming from any source, and the methodologies that we've put into place are quite robust to collect this data, to digitize it and to map it, and to put it together into spreadsheets that make it analyzable.
So this is available on your website?
So the final output of this particular experiment will be available within the next couple of days as a report. We presented the data to local residents and to the candidates for councillor today.
How has their response been?
So I think citizens knew. I mean, they know what's happening in their own wards, and so do councillors to some extent. But what I think everybody realized was the potential of this data. See, in 6 months' time, we're planning to do the exercise again in that ward. And here you have now a legitimate tool to hold that ward councillor accountable for making improvements.
Right.
If the number of dumpsters has not increased within 6 months, if the walkability of that ward has not improved within 6 months, you have a case to say, look, you haven't kept your promises.
Absolutely.
So it prevents them basically from making empty promises.
Right. So this data would ultimately be available, like you said, in a couple of days.
Yes.
In English and Tamil as well.
That's correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
But obviously, there's that whole question, because when it comes to campaigning,
Yes.
these candidates are all out and with their heart and soul campaigning and making promises. But once these elections are over, what guarantee do you have that these findings will just be another file on their table?
Right. Well, that's a very good question, and of course, there's always that danger when you're working with.
Because this is not the first of a kind. I mean, we have citizen journalists posting pictures
Right.
in papers, sending us pictures.
Right.
What guarantee is there then?
See, the difference between that and this is that those are individual instances in which a single citizen will take a photograph and put it on the net or send it to a newspaper, and it'll appear in a letter to the editor with a problem after it. The difference is here is that it's a ward-wide effort. And so you have an aggregated and complete picture of that ward as it is with all its conditions. It's not just one person doing it. It was 100 volunteers walking the roads and making a map. And I think the difference between this kind of an effort is that it's replicable. So again, in 6 months' time, if you do it, you now have a clear record through which to say, okay, councillor, do what you said that you would do.
Right. So are you going to make a record of his promises also, maybe then? Maybe through a recording or writing?
We'll have a record of what happened at the meeting.
Okay.
So whatever
you have
promise,
witnesses
yeah.
then.
So we have witnesses for those
Okay.
things. So
You plan
yeah.
to expand to other wards as well in perhaps some more time?
Yes. So what we would love is for this effort to inspire other people in other wards in the city to come forward with volunteers to us, and we'll make toolkits of these processes. So basically, this was an experiment. It was a pilot project, and we're refining our methodologies through the work of all these youngsters.
All right. So very quickly, if someone who's watching wants to be part of this drive, and if he happens to fall within your ward, what can he do?
Well, whether or not he's in the ward, they can just log on to our website, www.transparentchennai.com. They can look at all the data that we have available. They can sign up and get in touch with us. And if they have a group of volunteers who are ready, we're more than happy to come and give them our toolkits, to share with them the methodologies, and to help them visualize that data set and use it to encourage their own counselors to make improvements.
So there's no
locally.
registration fee whatsoever?
No, nothing.
In this process?
Nothing,
All right.
yeah.
We congratulate you for this initiative, and we hope that in 6 months' time when you do that follow-up, we also would look forward to some of those results. But thanks very much once again
Thank you so
for
much
joining
for
us
having
this evening in our studios.
Thank you.
Up ahead on the bulletin is Collywood, the next big thing for Miss Piggy Chops after Rawan's action-packed stunts. We'll hear it from the beauty herself up on the other side.